Good afternoon and welcome to the New Hampshire Insurance Department's monthly webinar. This month we are discussing elder exploitation and how that pertains specifically to contractors and contractors insurance. I'm joined by a number of my colleagues from the department here and Christa Clapp from the Department of Justice. We're very grateful that she's participating. I'd like to start out with a quick housekeeping note, and that is if you have any questions, we're happy to entertain those at the end of the presentation. So please type those into the chat box and we'll take questions at the end. Now, with a couple opening remarks, I'm happy to introduce Commissioner DJ Betancourt.
Well, thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for this month's NHID webinar. I'm pleased to welcome you to this important conversation on contractor insurance and elder exploitation, two topics that at first glance may seem separate, but in practice are often closely connected in ways that can have very real consequences for individuals and families here in New Hampshire. Here at the department, one of our core responsibilities is to help ensure that our insurance marketplace works for the people of New Hampshire, but not just in theory, but in everyday situations where coverages and contracts and consumer protections matter most. Home repairs, renovations, and contractor work are routine parts of life. We're all involved with it in some way. But they also involve financial decisions, legal agreements, and at times a degree of vulnerability, especially if you're an older adult. And unfortunately, we know that bad actors can exploit that vulnerability, whether through misleading contracts, inadequate or non-existent insurance coverage, or outright fraud. These situations can escalate very quickly and leave individuals exposed both financially and emotionally. And that's why conversations like the one we're having this afternoon are so important. Today's discussion is designed to do two things. First, to help you better understand the insurance side of contractor work, what to look for, questions to ask, how to protect yourself before a problem arises. And the second is to shine a light on the warning signs of elder exploitation and the practical steps that individuals, families, and communities can take to prevent it. This is not about making anyone an expert. It's about giving you practical tools and awareness to make informed decisions and to recognize when something doesn't feel right, and then know where to turn if it doesn't feel right. We are fortunate to be joined by Christa Clapp from the Department of Justice, and we're so thankful that our colleagues at the Department of Justice have agreed to take part in today's presentation. They bring in a level of expertise in elder abuse prevention that is an essential part of today's discussion. So again, we are grateful for their partnership. And again, on behalf of the New Hampshire Insurance Department, I want to thank you again for joining us. We take these issues seriously, and we are committed to trying to be a resource for the people of our state, not just today, but whenever you need guidance. And so with that said, I'll turn it over to Christa.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I think it's so important for people to understand that although we are in different buildings, we all work together to ensure that the residents of New Hampshire are as protected as they possibly can. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do have a couple of slides. So we're going to go right here. So hopefully that's that. So again, I do work under the Consumer Protection and Antitrust Bureau, but I am housed specifically in the Elder Abuse and Exploitation Unit. We do see a lot of scams and exploitation that are connected to contractor cases and some other types of contractor cases that we may prosecute differently that aren't elder exploitation. So I'm going to share some tips, some red flags, some of the things that we're seeing, and feel free to ask me questions, put them in the chat like they said. So first and foremost, if you are a consumer and you're experiencing any question about a contractor, if you've experienced what you think might be contractor fraud, or you think something bad is happening with your contractor, please feel free to reach out to the Consumer Protection and Antitrust Bureau. The phone number and the email address is on the screen. as well as a very long address where you can file a complaint. In the introduction, we talked about how this is contracting, having someone do a contract for you is, it's a big decision, right? And it involves a lot of money, and people save their money for years to do this. They, they may take out a loan. It's a big deal. And contractors don't require a license in the state of New Hampshire. So those two things combined can create a real problem. For anybody looking to get work done on their house or to put an addition on. So what's the first risk factor we ask people to look for? This kind of seems obvious, but if they take your money and run. Sometimes you'll be asked for a substantial deposit before the work begins. And by substantial, I mean a lot of money before the work begins. Don't be afraid to say no. You're the consumer. You're the person who is asking for this work to be done. You have the right to say no. Do your research and look, because a warning sign is if they're not online or they don't have a physical location, they probably aren't above board. One of the scams that we're seeing, not to take it out of the realm of an actual contractor relationship, but one of the scams that we see often is somebody receives an unsolicited email or phone call from somebody and then asks them to send money to a different entity that isn't even the same name as the person you've been speaking to. So those cases, they usually lack an online presence. There's no physical location. So do your research. They're called contractors, but a big red flag is if there's no contract or it's a very minimal contract. It doesn't give details about what kind of work they're going to do or how their work is going to happen. Ask questions. Ask more questions and keep asking questions. You have a right to know what you are signing up for. Again, this is a lot of money usually that's involved. And then when you're doing your research, look and see if there's bad reviews or a history of taking off with deposits. Go on to review websites. Go to the Better Business Bureau of New Hampshire. I see someone popped in the chat. Google, absolutely. Although be very careful when you're Googling, but look for the reviews and read them. You need to do the research. Don't just take a phone call from the son of a friend of a friend of a friend who says, hey, I'm in the business and I noticed your roof needs some repairs. We all want to be nice people and help people out, but don't bite, because typically that would be a scammer. And advocate for yourself. The second risk factor that we see a lot in general is just miscommunication. Just make sure that you understand if there's changes to orders, they're changing what they're doing. A friend of mine shared a story with me. They were having a chimney done and they ordered what they thought they were supposed to order. It ended up costing $15,000 more than what they thought it was going to be. So just make sure you understand that, how much it's going to cost, when you have to pay for that cost, if there's a change. And again, advocate for yourself and feel free to say no. Always look for documentation. So again, if a contract is minimal, that's a big red flag, but also document everything as you go along and as you're communicating with people. Write down the phone numbers that they're calling you from. Write down how much money you gave them, even if it's just a small amount. Just make sure that you're communicating. We all speak different language. I find this when I talk to my friends here at insurance. In the world of elder exploitation, we speak different language, right? And so there's times that I use phrases that they don't understand, or they use phrases I don't understand. And I've learned through doing this that I just have to ask the question. And keep things organized, the documentation. So risk number 3, and my friends in insurance who are hosting this webinar, again, thank you. They're going to go into more detail on this in a little bit, but the risk is if that contractor or the people working on your home perform subpar work or they cause damage to your home. Again, you pay a lot of money up front and then there's a lack of presence at your property or a lack of communication. That is a big red flag. There's a lack of references before they come. So not just you doing your resources or your research into them and using your resources, but there's a lack of references. Ask them for their references. Ask for their reviews, good and bad. Just make sure that they're properly insured. And you'll see on the screen, I wrote how to avoid this risk. Ensure your contractor is properly insured. It's written twice and in very big letters, because that's going to be a big key for you. So switching from just some of the basics on what you're looking for, again, those risk factors, taking your money and run, miscommunication, or performing bad work, subpar work, or damaging your property, I do want to talk a little bit about what this looks like when it's a scam or it's exploitation. So I think I mentioned the friend of the friend of the friend, or the son of the friend of the friend of the friend. We're seeing a lot of those kinds of complaints come through. People who, hired somebody out of the goodness of their heart, they thought, who are then losing money because work isn't getting done, or it's somebody who knew, a neighbor, who knew that this older person may be experiencing some hearing issues or experiencing some sight issues, or maybe it's a widow whose, spouse always handled all the money. And they get approached by somebody in the neighborhood who wants to help them out. That's a big red flag. Again, it's somebody who is trying to exploit somebody who has a vulnerability. And we all need to be aware that most elder exploitation occurs at the hands of a family member or a trusted person. That is a nationwide statistic. It's a worldwide statistic. It is a New Hampshire statistic. So just be very, very careful about who you're giving your money to, who you're giving your personal information to. Do not hire someone based just on a phone call. Meet them. And of course, we see these, and it's coming into spring and summer, which is home repair season. If you're approached by a group of people from down the street who say they have extra roofing materials or extra paving materials, that almost always is a scam. And that's pretty much what I have for tips and tricks and the risks involved. And again, I'll be hanging out for questions if there are some. Stop sharing. And we're going to turn it over to Luann, who's going to talk more from the insurance department.
Thank you, Christa. And thank everybody for joining us today. That was a really good overview of the tips and tricks and what you should be looking out for the red flags. And now we're just going to turn our attention a little bit towards the insurance now that you have determined what projects you are going to undertake and you have a contractor in mind. I don't know that a lot of people are aware of this, but if your contractor does not have proper insurance, that could fall squarely on you, because your homeowner's policy, generally speaking, is not going to provide coverage for your contractor to do work on your property. If he damages your property, or if he has workers that come with him and he doesn't have workers' compensation insurance, all of that could fall squarely on you. So what we're going to focus on now is what steps you should take and what you should be aware of from an insurance perspective. When you get to the point where you've signed the contract and you've done your due diligence, everything that Christa pointed out, and you're signing the contract, and you're going to first ask if they have insurance and what kind of insurance. And not everyone has to be an expert on this, because all it really takes is for you to say to the contractor, I would like a certificate of insurance from your agent. So not the contractor. The contractor will not hand you a certificate of insurance. It needs to come from their agent or insurance company, most likely the agent, they'll send you a certificate of insurance that shows you what the contractor currently has for insurance coverages. And I wanted to just take a little bit of time and just go over some of the highlights of the insurance coverages that you should be looking for. And you're always welcome to ask the insurance agent questions. Say, like, for example, I'm having a deck put on, or I'm having a roof redone. Is this the coverages that in the limits that we should be comfortable with? You know, your agent might be, the agent might be able to give you some advice towards that. The first coverage would be your general liability insurance. The contractor should have general liability insurance. That's going to cover bodily injury and property damage, as well as legal defenses related to the contractor's operations. Along with that, there can be coverage called products completed operations, which means after the work is completed, several months pass. If there's a defect in that his insurance will cover corrective action on his work. So general liability with products completed operations, and the limits that the insurance department, the minimum limits we would recommend is $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate. Again, that just means that for each occurrence, there's up to $1 million worth of liability coverages, and aggregate means in total there's $2 million. The next coverage that's really important to discuss and make sure that the contractor has, if he has any workers whatsoever, is workers' compensation insurance. And that is required if he has even just one employee, a part-time employee, it doesn't matter. Even sole proprietors really should have some if there's ever a chance that there's going to be part-time help needed. And the workers' compensation coverage is going to cover, obviously, any injury to the workers that he has on the property, and it will not fall back on the homeowners. And commercial auto liability, he should have that as well if he is using vehicles for business, and a recommended limit is 1 million combined bodily injury, property damage, and 2 million aggregate. Builder's risk insurance is really important. Let's say that you're actually adding an addition onto your property. So there will be a considerable amount of material on your property, maybe pallets of lumber or shingles or whatever the case may be. If there's going to be a considerable amount of building material on your property, builder's risk insurance is really important to have. The amount of builder's risk insurance should be the amount of the completed job. So it doesn't incrementally increase as the work gets done. It is always going to start out with once the project is completed, what is the total value? And that is where the limit of liability comes in. And then from there, professional errors and omissions, if the contractor is also making any design plans or he's responsible for anything like that, there could be some coverage there. Depending on the size of your project, we call these underlying limits of liability could be perfectly satisfactory for like the deck repair or the roof repair, that type of thing. If it's a larger scale job, maybe you're doubling the square footage of your home or something to that nature where it's a large undertaking, you might want to consider that the contractor has the umbrella coverage, the umbrella liability, umbrella and excess liability. That is just what it says. It goes over top all of the coverages that we've just discussed, and it gives like an added layer of protection. It increases the limits of liability of what is already there. That's for the larger scales. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the certificates of insurance themselves. When you do receive the certificate of insurance from the agent, you're just going to want to confirm exactly what Christa said, that the name of the business matches who you think you're doing business with. And it'll also have the agent's information, which is going to include their telephone number. And I encourage you to give them a call if you have any questions or concerns or want to just discuss it before the project gets underway. That'll show you, just confirm the coverages and the limits and the dates. An important fact about certificates of insurance, they are valid when they're printed. It's not a guarantee that the policy will not cancel before its intended term expires. And there's a way that you can protect yourself as a homeowner, as a consumer, in that you ask the insurance agent to be added to the policies as an additional insured and provide you with a 30-day notice of cancellation. So that means if the policy were expecting to cancel, maybe it's going to be for non-payment or for another reason, you would be notified so that you would be aware, hey, on such and such a day, this policy is going to expire. I'm not sure if it can be prevented or not. If it's non-payment, it just takes a payment to rescind that non-pay cancel. If it's for another reason, that may or may not be able to be rescinded. So you need to have your eyes wide open and be fully aware that there's going to be a cancellation. So that's when you're going to want to stop the project, and you can definitely reach out to us, and if that were to happen, and we can give you some guidance on that. It doesn't happen very often, but being added as an additional insured is going to give you that level of protection that you are going to know in advance of the policy canceling. And that is really just a quick overview of all the coverages and what you should be aware of. I see that my director, James Fox, is on the call. I was wondering, James, did you have any information that you wanted to add to what I've gone over?
No, I think you did a great job, Elaine.
Okay, thank you. At this
And Christa
time,
too.
and Christa too, very good job, yes. At this time, I'm going to turn it to Andrew to see if we have any questions in the chat.
Well, I don't see any questions yet. I saw some comments that were encouraging, but no questions. So we'll take a second. I know AJ just posted in there. If you have a question, please type it into the chat window. We'll circle back. I don't know if Commissioner Betancourt is still with us or had to jump for a meeting, but I wondered if, Christa, if you had any final thoughts.
I just really want to reiterate that, and thank you for that. So final thoughts are really, you never have to say yes when someone is asking you for extra money, or they're calling you out of the blue and they tell you there's an urgent reason. You don't have to give them your money. You don't actually have to answer the phone. You don't have to answer the door when people knock on it. Just really think about how you protect yourself and your assets. You have worked all your life for that money and it is yours. So I just really like to let people know that you can be actively resistant to scams and fraud. We all know about it. That's what we call passive awareness. But there's lots of ways that you can actively resist. And again, not answering your phone, not answering your door. Don't let strangers into your home. Don't talk to strangers. And never respond to the urgency and fear that scammers or people who are going to exploit you create.
Well, that's certainly great advice. Yeah, we noticed here at the department, many of the communications that we are referred to that are scams definitely have a sense of urgency built into them. So that's something to be aware of for sure. Well, we appreciate you very much, Christa. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for everyone who joined us live today. You can find this and all of our other webinars on our YouTube page, so be sure to check that out. And we thank you very much and hope that everyone has a great day. We'll see you next month for our next month's webinar. Thank you.